General Kwame Raoul of Illinois.
What college you mentioned for Miami?
Oh, yeah, profit.
In Clinton.
You have to get the red light on.
Well, I must have been that fifth witness that didn't get swept into the excellent category. Thank you, Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Grassley, members of the committee, for the invitation to speak to your committee. I'm excited to contribute to the discussion of potential bipartisan game-changing bankruptcy reform for student loan borrowers, and I thank the chairman and Senator Cornyn for putting forth this measure.
This question here.
The Illinois Attorney General's office has extensive experience dealing with the burden of student loans that student loans place on consumers. In 2019, our office received over 700 complaints about higher education, most concerning for-profit schools and student loans. These high-cost schools target low-income students and their federal student loans, which are incredibly and unnecessarily difficult for these students to discharge in bankruptcy. As a result, students burdened with loans that many never will pay off in their lifetimes. Those loans negatively impact students' abilities to make important life decisions. Americans hold over $1.7 trillion in student loan debt. Nearly 30% of federal student loan borrowers default within 12 years of entering college. A major contributor to student debt load are predatory and expensive for-profit schools. For-profit schools have the worst repayment rates. A shocking 98% of programs that failed the Department of Education's gainful employment metrics, which measured students' ability to repay their loans by comparing debt to earnings, were at for-profit schools. Since I took office in 2019, we have discharged over $20 million in fraudulently obtained student loan debt for Illinois borrowers, all used to pay for for-profit schools. Unfortunately for borrowers, when the schools declare bankruptcy or seek similar refuge in receivership, funds are not available to make borrowers whole. Borrowers who need relief must be able to discharge their federal student loans. Our experience investigating Westwood College in particular and ITT Technical Institute help illustrate the difficult position these students are in. My office sued Westwood College in 2012. Despite the school's closure, the widespread discharge of students' private student loans, and my continued advocacy, Westwood students are still waiting for relief from their federal student loans. My office brought claims against Westwood for misrepresenting the ability of students with Westwood credits to become police officers in Illinois. We also had claims against the school for making private student loans they know students could not pay. These loans were loss leaders designed to bring in just enough money to evade the 90-10 rule, which requires students to get 10% of their revenue from sources other than Title VII federal aid. Default rates were as high as 90% for some cohorts. In 2016, my office applied to the US Department of Education to discharge the loans of defrauded students. In 2019, I wrote the department urging it to discharge the Westwood loans. In July of this year, the department finally began to discharge some of individual applications based on evidence we provided with our application. The relief is welcome, but students need more. The department discharged loans for just under 500 borrowers, but we applied for relief for over 3,000. The tuition for Westwood's criminal justice degree was as high as $75,000. And Westwood had other similarly high-priced programs. Similar to Westwood, ITT engaged in a scheme to evade the 90-10 rule by pressuring students to take out private loans the school knew the students could not repay. Default rates were estimated to exceed 80% for some cohorts. ITT closed its doors and filed for bankruptcy in 2016. As of 2010, approximately 65.8% of ITT's revenue was derived from federal education funds, around $1.1 billion. Instead of investing these funds in the students, in 2019, ITT allocated $489 million of its revenue to profit. In June of 2019, my office, along with 44 other attorneys general in a bipartisan effort, announced a settlement against CUSA, one of the private loan providers, for more than $168 million in private student loan debt relief nationwide, benefiting more than 18,000 students. Similarly, in another bipartisan effort in September of 2020, we announced a settlement against Peaks, another such private loan provider, providing $330 million nationwide in private student loan discharges. However, just like Westwood, the federal loans continue to burden those students. This past April, a group of 25 states, including Illinois, submitted a group discharge application to the Department of Education on behalf of ITT students who attended from 2007 to 2010. They were all subject to misrepresentations by ITT regarding the overstated income students could expect to receive with an ITT education. I acknowledge and applaud the department's June 16 announced granting of 18,000 borrowers defense to repayment applications for former ITT students. We can only do so much in enforcing consumer laws. Many for-profit schools file for bankruptcy themselves, including ITT and Corinthian colleges. Students deserve the same right to bankruptcy relief as these schools. The standard loan repayment plan is designed so that loans are payable within 10 years. Among those Americans who fail to pay their debt within this period are borrowers who will simply not be able to repay this debt. Under current law, the vast majority of these borrowers are unable to discharge their student debt in bankruptcy. Allowing student loans to be freely dischargeable after 10 years from the time they first became payable serves two key purposes. It provides relief for Americans experiencing the most financial strain and who are otherwise eligible for bankruptcy relief, while also protecting solvency of governmental student loan programs. As to the theory that those might strategically seek out such bankruptcy, there are ample provisions in the bankruptcy code to guard against fraud, bad faith, and abuse to ensure relief is limited to those debtors who deserve relief. Discharging such debts will allow these former students to have the lives they may have been putting off, buying homes, getting married, and even starting families. Further, I strongly urge the committee to ensure that institutions are held accountable for failing to provide students an affordable education by tying bankruptcy discharges to institutional finances. Aligning its incentives at institutions with students' financial success was a recommendation made by the Senate Committee on Health, Education, and Labor and Pensions in its landmark 2012 report, and also a goal of the Gainful Employment Rule. Failing to hold these predatory institutions accountable does nothing but line the pockets of shareholders at the expense of taxpayers. Struggling borrowers have been waiting long enough. The time for a reform is now. I thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and I look forward to answering questions.
Thank you very much, Attorney